In the wild heart of the Old West, one cowboy's act of kindness changed everything. When he helped a starving native child, he never imagined what awaited him the next morning. Collision, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Tell us, where are you watching from? Globe showing Americas. Let's get started. Cowboy hat face. The wind cut through the plains like a whisper of ghosts. The sun was falling behind the distant ridges, painting the sky in bruised shades of crimson and gold. Dust curled up from the trail as a lone rider made his way toward his barn, a tall, broad-shouldered cowboy named Jack Monroe, whose silence carried more stories than a preacher on Sunday morning. Jack wasn't born cruel, but life had made him quiet. After years of cattle drives, gunfire, and graves left behind, he'd learned that speaking less meant hurting less. The townsfolk said he was half wolf, always out in the hills, always alone. But that evening, fate decided to test the walls he'd built around his heart. As he reached the barn, Jack noticed something: tracks. Small, uneven footprints in the dust near his fence line. Too small for a man. He stepped down from his horse, Boone, his hand hovering near the worn leather of his revolver holster. The wind rustled the dry grass, and somewhere, a hawk screamed. Inside the barn, the air smelled of hay and iron. Jack's boots creaked softly against the boards. Then he saw it. A little boy, thin as a stick, his face streaked with dirt, and his eyes glowing with fear and hunger, was crouched behind a hay bale. A small hand held a half-eaten carrot, trembling. His clothes were torn, his skin bronzed by the sun, his hair dark as raven feathers. Jack froze. The boy looked no older than 7, maybe 8. "Easy now, kid," Jack said, voice low like a calm wind. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt you." But the child didn't answer. He just stared, chest heaving. Jack noticed the necklace around the boy's neck, woven from bone and bead. A native charm. That explained it. The nearby tribes had been starving since the last drought. The settlers had taken the river lands, and with them, the buffalo. This boy was hungry enough to risk sneaking into a white man's barn. Jack slowly knelt, unhooking his canteen and a piece of dried jerky from his coat. "Here," he said. "Eat." The boy hesitated, eyes flickering like a wild animal cornered. Then, with trembling hands, he reached out. He devoured the food so fast that Jack's heart ached. When the boy finished, he looked up at Jack with something fragile: trust. "What's your name, son?" Jack asked. The boy's lips moved, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Tayan." Jack nodded. "All right, Tayan. You stay put tonight. Tomorrow, I'll take you to the river. You can find your way home from there." But Tayan shook his head, tears gathering in his eyes. "No home," he said softly. "All gone." Something inside Jack broke then. Something he thought had died years ago with his wife and their unborn child, lost to fever and cold. He saw in Tayan not just a hungry boy, but a memory of what he'd lost. That night, the wind howled like wolves around the ranch. Jack gave Tayan a blanket, a small cot of hay, and a plate of beans and cornbread. The boy ate in silence. Later, when Jack thought he'd fallen asleep, Tayan whispered something in his native tongue, his voice trembling with both grief and gratitude. Jack sat by the lantern, watching over him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. By morning, the world outside was painted silver with frost. Jack stepped out to chop wood, his breath clouding the cold air. Boone whinnied near the trough. Everything seemed still, until Jack felt it. A shift in the air. Then came the sound. Hooves. Dozens of them. Echoing across the valley like thunder. Jack looked toward the ridge, and his heart stopped. A long, dark line was descending toward his ranch. Warriors. Painted faces. Spears and rifles glinting in the sun. horses adorned with feathers and scars. There were at least 200 of them. Tayan stepped out of the barn, rubbing his eyes. When he saw them, his small body froze. Jack's instincts screamed danger. He grabbed his rifle and pushed the boy behind him. "Get inside," he ordered. "Now." But Tayan shook his head violently. "No. My people." The words hit Jack like a hammer. His people. The riders approached in perfect formation, the earth trembling beneath them. Jack could see their leader now, a tall man with silver streaks in his braids, his chest painted with war symbols. His eyes were sharp, watching Jack like a hawk. They reined in their horses a few yards away, forming a wall of power and silence. The air was thick with tension. Jack stood firm, rifle in hand. "I ain't looking for trouble," he called out. The leader dismounted, walking toward him. His presence was calm but commanding. "You found our child," he said in broken English. "He was lost. We searched for him 4 suns." Tayan ran forward, crying out in his language. The man caught him in his arms, holding him tight. It was the boy's father, or chief. The warriors murmured, some glaring at Jack, their hands hovering over weapons. Jack lowered his rifle, unsure what came next. Then, something unexpected happened. The chief turned to him. "You fed my son," he said. "You could have killed him. But you gave him life. For this, we owe you a great debt." Jack blinked. "Ain't no debt. Just did what was right." But the chief smiled slowly. "In our ways, that means everything." He lifted his hand, and all 200 warriors raised their weapons to the sky in salute. The sound of their cry rolled across the plains like thunder. Jack's chest tightened. He'd seen men salute generals before, but never like this. The chief stepped closer. "From this day, no man of my tribe will harm you or your land. You are friend of the Red Hawk people." And just like that, they were gone, disappearing into the golden haze of morning. Only the hoofprints and the echo of their cry remained. For weeks after that, Jack couldn't shake the feeling of something shifting inside him. Tayan and his father visited often. The boy brought small gifts, painted feathers, carved totems, pieces of hide. Jack taught him how to saddle a horse, how to throw a rope, how to shoot a tin can off a fence post. He found himself smiling more. Laughing, even. One evening, Tayan's older sister, Ayana, rode in with her father. She was quiet, graceful, her long black hair braided with red thread. Her eyes were deep and knowing. When Jack met her gaze, something inside him stirred that he thought was long dead. Ayana thanked him for saving her brother's life. Her voice was calm but strong, the kind of voice that could hush storms. "The spirits saw your kindness," she said softly. "They do not forget." Jack felt awkward, unsure how to respond. "Just did what anyone would have done," he muttered. But Ayana shook her head. "Not anyone. Many men would have shot first." That night, as the moon rose over the plains, Ayana stood beside him near the corral. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was alive. Jack found himself telling her things he'd never told another soul, about his wife, his loneliness, his guilt. Ayana listened. When he was done, she placed her hand gently on his arm. "The heart can heal," she said. "But only when it learns to open again." Her words stayed with him. Days turned to weeks. The land began to thaw, spring creeping across the plains. Jack often rode with the tribe now, helping them hunt or trade with settlers. He became a bridge between two worlds, once enemies, now slowly learning to trust. But peace in the West never lasted long. One afternoon, a group of armed settlers rode through town, angry and restless. They'd heard rumors that Jack was harboring savages. They accused him of betraying his own kind. Jack tried to reason with them, but hatred doesn't listen. That night, as he sat by the fire, the sound of galloping hooves shattered the calm. The barn door burst open, Tayan ran in, breathless. "Bad men coming," he cried. "Guns!" Jack grabbed his rifle and ran outside. Down the valley, torches flickered, half a dozen riders heading straight for his ranch. He stood his ground as the first shot rang out. A bullet whizzed past his shoulder, splintering the fence. Boone neighed in terror. Jack fired back, hitting one man's hat clean off his head. The battle was short but violent. Jack fought like a man defending more than his home. He was defending his second chance at life. But there were too many. They surrounded him, shouting slurs, aiming to burn his barn. Then the earth itself seemed to shake. Out of the darkness came the thunder of hooves, 200 strong. The Red Hawk warriors. They swept through like a storm, arrows and spears flying. The settlers never stood a chance. Within minutes, the fight was over. Smoke and silence hung in the air. Jack stood there, panting, his rifle empty. The chief approached him again, eyes glinting in the firelight. "We repay our debts," he said. Ayanna dismounted and ran to Jack. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice trembling. He shook his head, though his arm was bleeding. She tore a strip from her shawl and wrapped it around his wound. Their eyes met, and in that moment, neither spoke. They didn't have to. The tribe stayed through the night, guarding his ranch. The settlers never returned. Word spread across the plains, about the cowboy who saved a native boy and the warriors who saved him in return. Weeks later, when the land was quiet again, Ayanna came to visit one last time. The tribe was moving north for summer hunting. "You will come with us one day," she said softly. "You belong under the same sky." Jack looked out at the horizon. "Maybe I already do." She smiled, a slow, gentle smile that warmed the cold corners of his heart. She stepped closer, resting her hand on his chest. "Then let the wind carry you back to us." He wanted to speak, but words failed. So he did the only thing he could, he leaned down and kissed her. It was not wild or desperate, it was quiet, honest, and filled with the ache of two souls who had found light after years of darkness. When she rode away that morning, the sunrise turned the plains into gold. Jack watched until she was a dot on the horizon. Then he whispered, "Thank you, Tayan. You brought me back to life." Months passed. Seasons turned. Jack never remarried, but his heart was no longer lonely. The Red Hawk tribe came often, trading, sharing food, stories, laughter. The boy he'd once saved was now growing strong, his eyes full of pride. Sometimes, at dusk, Jack would look toward the distant hills where Ayanna's people camped, and he'd feel the wind brush his cheek, soft and warm, like her hand had that night. And he'd smile. Because in a land built on dust and blood, he had found something rare, a love that crossed borders, healed wounds, and taught even the coldest heart to beat again. Hook lines, for start of story. 1. When a lone cowboy offered bread to a starving native child, he didn't expect to wake up to 200 armed warriors outside his barn. 2. He thought he was helping one child, but the next morning, the whole tribe came for him. 3. In the silence of dawn, the sound of hooves echoed, a debt of kindness was about to be repaid in the most shocking way. 4. He had faced gunmen, storms, and hunger, but nothing prepared him for what kindness would bring to his doorstep.